Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Menzies, and I'm your CAMA National Chair. Welcome to the third installment of the Next in Agri-food webinar series. If this is your first event that you're joining CAMA since fall when we relaunched our brand, welcome. We are now the Canadian Agri-food Marketers Alliance, and we are continuing our event series with our new name and our evolved mandate today of representing Canada's entire food value chain. And I think today is a great example of that with our two presenters that are speaking to two kind of different ends of the value chain for us. CAMA, as many of you probably know, is made up of our provincial chapters that work very hard to offer opportunity for members to connect and to grow our agri-food marketers and communicators from across the country, their skills and their passion within this dynamic industry that we are all working within. And if you're not a CAMA member, you should consider becoming one so you can reap the rewards of everything that CAMA offers you in your province. Our final webinar, just so you can put this into your calendar if it's not already, is May 12th. This is featuring Roquette Canada, and it's a go behind the scenes where they used the pandemic to rewrite the playbook in events, and specifically their official launch of the world's largest pea protein plant in Manitoba. So it should be very interesting to hear from Michelle, who's their Communications and Public Affairs Manager on May 12th. So that's on your calendar, and you have not subscribed for that one, please do so. We've got a couple of shout outs for Ontario and Manitoba for hybrid events. So that's right, you heard it here, in-person events, as well as some virtual ones as well if you're not in the respective provinces. So our first one here is being hosted by our Ontario folks, Making Connections Matter. So you can join the fellow members if you're in that that province. If not, you can join virtually. It's their first in-person professional development event in a couple of years, of course. Among many things, the COVID pandemic taught us some hard lessons, opened doors for new opportunities, and changed the way that we communicate. And so they've got a great lineup of speakers here that you can see on your screen: website optimization, social influencers, podcasters. So definitely look into that event. And in a moment, I'll tell you how you can do that. But before I do that, I wanted to talk to you just about the Manitoba hybrid professional development event as well. That's happening on June the 8th. So again, if you're in the province of Manitoba, mark that down for your calendars and please attend. And if not, it will be a virtual event as well. So you can always attend in that way. So this will focus on Canada's food system, how it's adapting specifically within marketing and positioning of food, consumer messaging, how to position now and in the future, new opportunities, synergies, innovation, and where food trends will take us. This is a play on beyond products, obviously, with their crafty title there. And so they're looking at the disruption of food trends, something that I'm thinking that Joanne's going to be talking about today as well. So watch your inbox for both of these events coming to you for registration for either the Ontario or the Manitoba events. They look like they're going to be good ones. A shout out for our socials. So if you're not already following us and engaging with us on social, why are you not? We have a national Twitter account as well as our LinkedIn. And so please be sure to do that. There's lots of great activity going on, and it's a great way to connect with your fellow marketers across the country. We've got a few webinars, Next in Agri-food webinar sponsors that I want to do a quick shout out for. So 6P Marketing, Protein Industries Canada, and Top Crop Manager. Their support not only supports our webinar series, but also CAMA really as a whole for implementing and expanding on our offerings to members such as the Next in Agri-food series. So thank you to them very much. And then also some additional thank yous are our official CAMA sustaining partners. Hopefully you've seen these organizations before through CAMA events, as well as working with them within the agri-food system. So these were inaugural partners for our sustaining partner program. They're obviously proving that they're committed to our ongoing focus of ensuring CAMA continues to be a dynamic, credible, and relevant organization for all of us agri-food marketers from across the country. So our 5 committed members across the screen, as you can see: Ad Farm, AGI, Bayer, Glacier Farm Media, and Real Agriculture. And I want to thank them for their continued financial support for CAMA for all the things that we are doing for the betterment of our membership. And just a quick shout out to Bayer as well. They have signed on for their 2nd year, so I want to give them a big thanks for that. At this time, I'll ask Ben to turn his camera on. Actually, he's already there. Unmute himself. Just a few housekeeping items before we jump into our presenters today. Your questions, please have them, and please type them into the Q&A box. I'll be monitoring that, and we'll be asking those questions on your behalf to our speakers, so make them tough. I know our speakers are ready for some tough questions from you. We'll answer those at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded, as you already know, and it will be emailed out to all of you within 24 hours for your viewing pleasure afterwards. And we will be sending a follow-up survey to all the participants. So please fill that out. It really helps us to make sure that we are offering the types of programming that you essentially want, because again, if you're not enjoying it, then we don't want to be doing it. So I'll now turn over to CAMA Ontario's president, Ben Lanthier, with Sportswood Printing to introduce today's presenters. Ben.
Thanks, Robert. I'm Ben Lanthier with Sportswood Printing, and I'm currently in my second year as Ontario chapter president. It's my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers today. Joanne MacArthur is president and founder of Nourish Food Marketing, where she builds powerful strategies for food and beverage products in Canada, the US, and Europe. She works hands-on with the Nourish team, guiding the creation of marketing plans that move products off shelves and into consumers' shopping baskets, and perhaps most importantly, into their hearts. She currently appears as food marketing expert in the international TV documentary series, Eat Me, or Try Not To, airing on Curiosity Stream. Len Kahn is founder of Kahntact. He grew up in a dairy farm family and graduated from the University of Guelph in 1985 with a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture with a major in agricultural economics. Len drew on his farming experience and education throughout his career as he worked at a strategic level and developed marketing plans and brand strategies for leading agribusiness enterprises. We're pleased to have both Joanne and Len share their insights on the changing face of the agri-food marketing from 22 and beyond. Please welcome Joanne and Len.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Fun fact, Len Kahn and I went to high school together. So there we go. Hopefully you can see my screen. I did that right. Let's jump in. For those of you who haven't seen our trend report, that's the cover for our trend report this year. That's actually a Jenga game made out of food to show just how perilous things seem to be right now. So we launch that trend report. We launched it in November. A lot's happened since that time, and we'll give you a bit of an update. But because we work only in food and we work across the whole food ecosystem, I like to say that we have a privileged position on the food ecosystem. So we started doing a trend report, I think it's over 6 years ago, because we do a lot of original research, secondary research for ourselves, for our clients. And at the end, I'll show you where you can download this report. It's 40 pages, so there's a lot there. And you can also download some past year's reports, because as you know, trends, we're not talking about fads, things that come and go. We're talking about trends that build over time. And so the trend reports from the past years that you see here are still, those trends are still continuing. So it's worth looking at those. Plus, it's fun to see, do we really know what we're talking about? You can check our record from past years. So that's also good proof of concept. So like I said, our 2022 trend report was released in November, and a lot's happened since then. We thought we were just coming out of COVID. Little did we know that we were going into another global crisis with the war on Ukraine, and that we'd be seeing food inflation at levels that we haven't seen probably within our life. And on top of that, climate change is getting very real. So instead of the new normal, we really need to start thinking about what is the new reality. And climate change has been called a code red for humanity. I don't have to tell all of you about the crazy weather events we had in Canada last year, from flooding to drought to forest fires. And that will continue probably at an even more rapid pace. So we're now seeing that our health and the planet's health are linked. The other thing we're really starting to see is more generational divides in how consumers see the world and what they want from food. So for example, seniors and boomers, they're more focused on personal health, whereas younger generations like Generation Z are more interested in planet health. and 72% of those have expressed anxiety about how climate change will affect them. And if you look at, there was just a recent piece of research looking at people between the ages of 14 and 44, they are twice as likely as older consumers to consider the environmental impact of the food that they're purchasing when they're in a grocery store. So, you know, if that younger generation is your target, not doing something on the climate front is going to be a real brand breaker for them, because, you know, eating food is not just about human survival anymore. It's also about the planet's survival. I just want to make a note that when we do talk about trends, we're not making value statements here. We're just trying to prepare our clients and yourselves for what we believe is coming next, so you can future-proof, prepare your business. But we work across that whole food ecosystem. So, you know, we're not saying good or bad, no value judgments here, just what we see coming. And as I said, you know, 40-page report, you can download it at the end. I'll be taking you through the first 7 trends, and then I will pass it to Len, who is the agricultural trend expert, and he'll take you through the last one. So coming out of COVID, we really expect more of a focus on the elderly and boomers. And it's interesting how under-targeted this group is by marketers. I mean, I know that, you know, for my clients, most of them don't even do market research with consumers over the age of 65. And yet they represent a really massive marketing opportunity. And we see both boomers and seniors looking for more functional foods to support healthy aging, right? We're starting to think of health span rather than a lifespan. And, you know, with what happened with COVID in long-term care homes, you know, it's not surprising that 81% of these consumers over the age of 65, they want to age at home. And so how can you support that mission? You know, and obviously nutritional needs different, right? They're looking for things that support muscle mass, skeletal strength, immunity, vitality. So anything that's going to help them there, you'll see a big payoff. And we're seeing, you know, companies that do invest in this area, they do see that payoff. So Instacart, for instance, that a lot of boomers and seniors use for the first time to get their groceries online. They set up a seniors help desk. And while their customer service interactions with this group took longer, what they found was that they were more loyal than other groups. So the payout was there. This picture that you see on the top, that is a Super Age brand ambassador, and Super Age is a superfood out of the UK. They call themselves the first superfood targeted to boomers and seniors, and they're all about providing powerful nutrition to allow that group to achieve their bucket lists. So the other thing is that this group is much more technically savvy. So, you know, how can you simplify? How can you lighten the load for them? I feel like I went past one. No. So, you know, can you bump up the font size? Can you make it a little bit easier for them? And the other thing to remember is, you know, boomers today don't look the same as boomers yesterday. You know, you probably saw this meme going around the internet. That's a Golden Girl on one side from the show, and Jennifer Lopez, both portraying the same age. So this generation doesn't look like your grandmother did, and they're going to fight aging like no other generation before. And, you know, they have most of the wealth in society, so they've got the wherewithal to do that as well. So how can you best serve this age cohort? Can you develop something that will support healthy aging? Can you do something that lightens the load? For instance, finish at home meals where they don't have to cook everything from scratch, but they still feel like they heated it up, they assembled it, and they feel some pride in actually serving that to their family. And the other thing to remember is grandma doesn't look like grandma anymore. And I say that proudly as a grandmother of 2. So the next trend is about purpose transparency to gain consumer trust. And we're really, in an age where cynicism's increasing, and brands need to move from market to me to matter to me. And we've been talking about this trend for a long time, this move to radical transparency. How far back can you pull that curtain? And I know that a lot of producers don't want to invite consumers in, but it's really becoming table stakes, so to speak. Consumers, there's an expectation that they want to see what practices you're doing in order to build trust. And you've all seen, I'm sure, the CCFI research that showed for the first time our food system was actually moving, consumers believe it's moving in the wrong direction. And that's the first time we've seen a real decline in trust. And also for the first time, we saw global warming and climate change enter the top 5 list of top life issues. So there is rising demand from consumers to share your origin story, to share your practices. How do you treat the inputs and the outputs from your business? How do you treat your workers? That includes migrant workers as well as full-time. And we also know that purpose is really critical in terms of attracting and maintaining staff. And that's critical right now when we look at the shortages that we have across the board. And so for some inspiration to share with you in terms of how far back you can pull that curtain, Local Line is an e-commerce platform that you may have heard of. It connects local farmers across North America to sell their products directly to consumers. Another one, I think, is an app that you can connect with the coffee farmers who actually grew the beans that are in that morning cup of joe that you're enjoying. And on the left, that's from the biggest retailer in Italy, and they've actually given consumers the traceability platform in the palm of their hand. So they use QR codes, which have grown during the pandemic and aren't going away. You can snap on any product, and it will take you all the way back. So full traceability. Since we wrote our trend report, Walmart also launched 2 labels under the Better For You to support their sustainability goals. And this is, you may have heard of Green Choice. It started out as a mobile app where you could make purchase decisions based on your values. Well, they've now moved to an online marketplace, and you can choose products from, retailers like Walmart, Walgreens, Target in the US, and you can actually filter it by your values and purchase directly online. So purpose transparency is fast becoming table stakes, as I said. So how far back can you pull that curtain? Invite the consumer in to build loyalty. Also, have fresh eyes when you look at what you're currently doing. We often don't get credit for what we're already doing. We kind of take it for granted. So, what can you take credit for that you're not already doing? And remember, words on a website are one thing, but it's far more powerful to show pictures, video, or if you can go as far as live streaming, that would be the gold standard. So have a thought about that. Our next trend is about plant-based. Fun fact, did you know that veggie burgers were actually invented at roughly the same time as hamburgers? This is not really a new thing. They both show up in cookbooks in the late 1800s. And it's certainly, we first talked about plant-based being a key trend back in our 2018 trend report. But a lot's changed since then. And even since we wrote this report, we've seen in quick serve restaurants, which often serve as a leading indicator for the rest of the food system, we're seeing a decline in these processed burgers, Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger. We're even seeing in the US, McPlant, which they're testing at McDonald's, is really struggling right now. So we saw a huge increase in sales, and we're starting to see a fall off there. And so we think we're going to see 2 ends of the spectrum here. We're going to have, that one side where the products are trying to mimic meat and, are very processed, extruded proteins, fat, flavoring. And on the other end, we're going to have, the embracing the plant, real food again. defining themselves by what's best about them, whether it be a chickpea or something else, rather than what they're not, i.e. meat. So we also warned in previous trend reports about the whole plant-based term starting to lose its meaning with consumers and credibility, much like we saw happen with the natural term. And in turn, we actually have seen that since. That better for you halo around these extruded products is starting to really dim. And a lot of consumers don't believe that these products are actually better for them versus the meat that they're replacing. And a lot of consumers are looking for something that's nutritional, more whole foods based, and would switch to that. We're also really seeing generational differences in this space. Again, we're seeing, consumers at the older age using these products because they think they're better for you, whereas younger generations are eating these products because they're better for the planet. And while older consumers have, shunned GMOs, we're actually seeing these younger generations embracing science more. Frankly, they know that this is, science got us through the pandemic, and it's going to be a big part of climate, overcoming climate change and feeding the planet going forward. So they're more accepting of that. We're seeing, Impossible Foods talks proudly about using GMO, soy, and hemp. And it's interesting to see their marketing to these younger generations. If you go on their website, it's called The Birds and the Trees. It's an online guide to teenagers talking to their parents about meat's impact on climate change. And they're really borrowing a page out of the tobacco, the no smoking lobby, where they use kids to educate their parents. So we're seeing the same thing here. So, we've seen lots of innovation in meat and dairy, but there's been really gaps in other products, and you really need to think beyond the usual suspects. We saw Beyond Meat in the US has just introduced a shelf-stable jerky product, and we think that seaweed's going to start to make waves. We're seeing investment going up in that area. The world's biggest food companies, Tyson's investing there, Unilever's already investing in that area. And in 2021, we saw investment up by 36%. We saw an algae milk launched in Singapore. And, it's got a great climate story because unlike almond milk that uses lots of water, those microalgae fermentation tanks, they need limited water, and they utilize the byproducts. So there's a much stronger climate story there. And we also know that seaweed's lost its ick factor with younger generations. Where lots of seaweed snacks. I was just at the CL food show last week as well, and there was a lot of seaweed products there versus what I've seen in past years. So how should your plant-based offering, if you have one, how should it be formulated and positioned to appeal to those different demographics? And, is there an opportunity to expand into other product categories? And, can you find that sweet spot between both better for you as well as better for the planet? A lot of legacy businesses are built around this traditional shopper path to purchase. But with COVID, we saw e-commerce really jump ahead probably by about a decade in terms of adoption. And in the digital space, if you think about it, you've really perfected that one-click order. So you can do your meal planning, you can get your recipes, your meal solutions, and all the ingredients basically with one click. But that all falls down when you come into the store. And a lot of people out there, talk about retail being dead. I don't believe that's true. Consumers love to shop for certain things. I just think bad retail is dead. So, I think grocery needs to go backwards and re-engineer with a consumer shopping solution in mind. Because right now, if you think about your grocery store, it's set up the same way it has been for 50 years, right? The same aisles, the same products in the same aisles. And that's how grocery stores, their category managers, how they're organized, but it doesn't really it's not how consumers would like to shop. So, is there a way to go backwards and do that? Since the launch of our trend report, we've seen Snapchat has launched an AI-powered food scanning recognition feature. So you can use this in store, and you can get information on food items as well as recipe suggestions. And I would also recommend, I won't play this for you now, but check out, it's called Vincent, and he is an AI voice-enabled avatar, and he helps consumers select the right wine for their occasion in a very fun and engaging way. So lots of things changing there. So we think that consumers will probably continue to shop in store for inspiration, but they will take some of those staples and purchase them online or with subscription models. We've seen a growth in subscription models actually for consumer packaged goods, up 31% in the past 12 years. And in terms of some store inspiration, look at that picture of Erewhon. It's they've got 7 stores in the US, in California, and they're sort of a next level Whole Foods. Beautiful store. You pay $200 US for a membership for the privilege of shopping in their stores. But we do think you're going to see more of that, engaging all of the senses. And in the top left, this is a subscription model for toilet paper, because who enjoys shopping for toilet paper? And it's out of Australia. It's called Who Gives a Crap, and they are B Corp, so they give half of their profits back to build toilets in the developing world, which they claim is the invention that saved more lives than anything else. So, I don't think consumers want physical retail to go away, but they do want more convenient experiences, and they want solutions. So I think we'll see more of a combining of offline and online as well to create that sort of seamless phygital experience, and more elevation in store, right? Appealing to all of our senses and bringing inspiration. Hybrid's probably one of the words of the year from last year. We've seen hybrid shopping patterns, as I mentioned, hybrid working patterns, but it goes across the whole food ecosystem as well. Nobody's staying in their lane anymore, as everyone's trying to solve for those daily meal occasions. And we've seen the rise of the grocer. Sobeys, if you've seen, they've got in-farm units growing herbs in their grocery stores. Fresh City Farms they started as a farm up in Downsview, and they now own 8 brick and mortar stores that specialize in local products as well as wines. And Costco, they own, poultry processing plants so that they can continue to hit that price point for their rotisserie chicken. And Walmart even went and hired, they got into the logistics business so that they had ships to make sure that their supply chain was protected. Freshie, you may know them, they're a quick serve restaurant. They actually bought the majority stake in Natura Market, which is an online health and wellness specialist. And we're also, Amazon just added to Alexa a what to eat feature, where they will give users recommendations on restaurants, prepared items, recipes with, of course, recipe ingredient ordering from Whole Foods. And it also allows the user to filter it by dietary preference. So what complementary goods and services can you make to make your customers' life better? And what would forward or backward integration possibly look like for your business as well? So the link between gut health and wellness continues to grow. First we had the probiotics, that was the good bacteria, then the prebiotics to feed them. Now we have postbiotics, and that's really kind of the waste thing that comes from fermenting. And think of it as upscaling on a micro scale. So we're seeing interest in this area growing by almost 400% over the last year. And the term microbiome is also going mainstream. We've seen searches there go up by 250%, and lots of new product launches using those terms. Baby Bell, you probably have heard of them. They just launched into the US what they claim to be is the first functional dairy snack. And then Olipop, which you can see there, it's a ready-to-drink sparkling beverage that supports gut health as well. You know, it turns out that all the research is showing a healthy gut is about more than just healthy digestion. It really links to a lot of what we do. You know, there's the gut, brain, lung axis that lots of research is now talking about. And so as that research grows, consumer interest in how to optimize it is going to grow as well. We've all heard of, and just a lot of us have done DNA tests, but it turns out that our microbiome probably defines us more than our DNA in some ways. And you're seeing companies like Viome come out where you can actually test your microbiome, and it will give you suggestions for how you should eat to optimize that. We've also seen Unilever just announced a research partnership with Holobiome, and that is one of the world's largest collections of human microbiome samples. And so they're going to be working together to come up with new products that, again, optimize that. So lots of interesting things there. So we expect that we're going to see more functional foods with gut health and more fermented foods as well, to really capitalize on consumers' interest in that area. And again, when we wrote this, who knew that we talked about inflation? We knew it was coming, but we certainly didn't know it was going to be coming to the degree we see here. And I know Len's going to talk about that as well. And, you know, during the pandemic, consumers had more budget to shift into more splurge experiences. They weren't traveling, they weren't going out as much. So they traded up at the grocery store for that prime rib. But now as things are opening up, and we've got rising food inflation, we're expecting that consumers are going to be reevaluating some of that behavior. You know, that convenience grocery delivery or food delivery may not be worth as much for them. And we're already starting to see consumer behavior changing. So we're seeing discount banners, grocery stores going up. 40% now are shopping at them once a week. And this is the crazy statistic, dollar stores. People are shopping at dollar stores for food. So 24% are going there once a week. And that's up from 20% last year. So lots of pressures going there. And so I talk about the high-low fashion trend. So that started out, it was sort of I'll go and get a Joe Fresh or a t-shirt from the Gap, and I'll pair it with a designer blazer, right? That's sort of high-low. So we're expecting that we'll see the same thing with consumers in food. So will I, get some basic, no name chickpeas, but will I get a really expensive olive oil to finish it as a way to elevate that whole meal? So I think you have to look at, what's high, low look like for your category. And I think we're going to see that middle section really be squeezed here. And private label is going to be a winner on both ends. We know that consumers, especially in Canada, have a very positive view of private label. And in some cases, they think it outperforms even the national brand. So, again, we saw meal kits really get a second life. They were kind of dying out before the pandemic. They had a second life during COVID. Will they get squeezed? Will you see consumers go for the grocery meal kits, skip the ones in the middle, and then go for the high end? And so how can you, if you are going direct to consumer, or if you're providing private label, if that middle is going to get squeezed, how do you best position yourself? And so this year we had a bonus trend for the first time. We included this because we're seeing that line between human and pet food really blur. And also going into an inflationary period or possibly a recession, we have seen that the pet food category is incredibly resilient. Consumers never cut back in that area. We also know during COVID that pet adoption was a big thing. There are now more pets in Canada than there are kids. So this is a big market that you should be aware of. So in the US, we first saw the line blurring with Ben & Jerry's. They came out with a line of doggy desserts using the same ingredients as their plant-based human products. But most interestingly, they shelved them in the same area of the freezer. So I'm treating myself, and then get a treat for Fido as well. And I think if we look at the number of big food companies, a lot of them also have pet food divisions. Think Mars, Purina, General Mills, Smuckers. And in fact, since our trend report, we saw Nestle's Purina come out with a dog food that optimizes their microbiome. So, you know, these things are really, really starting to cross over. We also know that pets have a huge carbon paw print. And I talked about how younger generations are very concerned about that. So we're seeing terms like flexi doggying coming up for the plant forward dogs. If you look at this product, it's offered at Walmart. It's chickpea-based superfood for dogs. So it's a way of people to lower their pets' carbon footprint. You know, pets eat, it's estimated 20% of the world's meat. So this is an area where you can really make a change. And we've seen the vegan pet food market grow. I also think that this is an opportunity for those ick proteins, the insects, the mealworms. This may be an opportunity for pets rather than people. And we're also seeing some of the big companies like Hills, which is owned by Colgate-Palmolive. They're starting to develop cultured meat products or lab meat for their dog foods as well. So, you know, expect more humanization here. We know that only 13% of dog owners feed their dogs exclusively kibble. So I think there's an opportunity there as well. So if you have a product, can you extend it to that four-footed family member? Again, it's something retailers love because it does drive retail traffic. And as I said, it's pretty inflation proof. And, you know, rather than thinking of shelving it in the pet food aisle, you know, is there a way to have a companion product for the companion animal as well? And now I'm going to flip it over to Len, who's going to bring it home with our 3 ag trends.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joanne. So Kahntact and Nourish started working together in 2015, and I think it's because Joanne and I independently both saw a trend of kind of agriculture and food coming closer together, which has turned out to be the case. But one of the places where the two sectors differ, I think, is just in the speed at which change happens. So we first cooperated on a trend report in 2019, and so we have done 4 together. I admit I struggle every year because on the food side, you can go from nothing to an idea, to a fad, to a trend, to something that's well established relatively quickly, under 2 years, sometimes even quicker than that. Whereas those of us who work in ag know that change comes slowly. Why farmers are extremely conservative, and also just the implications of making any kind of change. You know, there's the old joke that farmers are the eternal optimists. They're the only business people who will put $1 million worth of seed, $500,000 worth of fertilizer, $300,000 worth of crop protection onto the ground and then pray for rain. So the risks are extremely high. So this year we looked at 3, call them trends: the farm economy, mental health issues that are coming up in agriculture, as well as labor challenges. Because of what I've just said, I'm not going to give you necessarily, I'm going to provide a bit of an update, but not on each one of these because some of them things have not changed. But there has been a lot that's gone on in the last 6 months, and Mary and the team had asked us then to talk about implications for agri-marketers. So next slide, Joanne. So relatively speaking, there's been a lot that's gone on. So we will generally start thinking about our trends in late summer, start doing our research, drafting them in the fall, and then we publish in November. In November, there was very little talk about a war in Ukraine. And now, of course, this is a focal point of everyone's day. I'm not here to tell you I can see the future and know how it's going to shake up, but it is a significant disruption. This is hard to talk about because of the suffering that underlies this, but the crisis in Ukraine is very likely positive for the Canadian agriculture industry. I was at Best of Nama a number of years ago, and there was a guest speaker. His name was Andy Andrews, and he was from New Orleans, and this was just after Hurricane Katrina. And he had a weird, interesting thing to say. He said, disasters are an average like everything else. So he had had his house wiped out. There was all kinds of suffering and pain, and we can all remember that. So he said it was a disaster, right? Unless you owned the local Rona, unless you were a handyman or ran a construction company. So these are not pleasant things to talk about. Ukraine is definitely disrupting our markets. We don't know how. Off the top, though, it looks like all things being equal, it's positive for agriculture. Back in November, I'd say when we published, we were coming out of wave 5. I try and be an eternal optimist, and it looked like we had enough vaccines that if we weren't done with COVID, at least was going to be manageable, and that has not turned out to be the case. It's still an issue. So it's affecting any number of things, including labor. There are still, since then, there are areas of the country that are suffering from drought. There's areas from the country that are suffering from excessive moisture. There are areas of the country right now, including outside my window here in Guelph, that still have snow at a time when seed should be going into the ground. There have been some, I'm going to talk a little bit about this, some fundamental shifts in demand, which affects ag. And then, of course, supply chain and logistics continue to be a problem. So some of these are more or less not normal, but things that we deal with. Others, like Ukraine and COVID, are kind of shocks to the system. Not to mention avian flu, potato wart, that the outcome is still a little unknown, but touch individual sectors. Next slide. So what is the effect on Canadian agriculture? And the answer is it is complicated. Farmers in Canada, farmers around the world are not a uniform group. So to make a blanket statement, so I have a son with autism, and I had a physician once say, you know, if I have 10 people in my waiting room with autism, I have 10 different conditions. Farming is very much the same way. What region of the country are you in? What is the weather in your particular region? What are the, are you a supply managed or a non-supply managed? How big is your farm? So it's very hard to pin down, what any of this means you can look at it at a macro level, but it will be uneven at an individual farm or farmer operation level. Next slide. So this was one of the big ones, and I'll spend most of my time talking about this, just about the Canadian farm economy. So the Canadian farm economy has been humming along. I remember going to University of Guelph in 1981. The Canadian ag economy was not in good shape. You could buy a lot of land in Western Canada for not a lot of money. But really since kind of 83, 84, 85, whenever the ethanol program came into the US, which jacked commodity prices, agriculture, specifically Canadian agriculture, has been on a long and sustained period of time where it was very healthy. So the question was, are there enough external forces to tip the Canadian farm economy? Next slide. And we looked at a number of different things: inflation, interest rates, government policy. So inflation is definitely a factor now throughout the economy. I've got some numbers up here. I don't have to go through them. Food inflation especially, 1.3% on an annualized basis a year ago or so, now at 7.7%. There are two effects on agriculture. So I think anyone who's close to agriculture knows that all that inflationary pressure is not going directly down to farm level. In fact, not a lot of it does, but it is negative on the input side. So fertilizer, any fuel-based inputs are going up significantly. And I just, before this meeting, I read a forecast that this actually is moving the curve. The combination of drought and fertilizer prices and dropping things like canola acreage that use that a little more intensely. The flip side is we are seeing inflationary pressures on the price side. So I don't know if I mentioned this or I mentioned this later on, but canola prices are going up. The dairy industry, supply managed, is tied to cost of living. They have got significant increases. If you watch or you read Sylvain Charlebois, that's his favorite topic. So inflation is a double-edged sword. Next slide. So yeah, there's the dairy part. It really depends where you sit in the market, right? That's the answer to everything in agriculture. It depends. We are not a uniform industry. Like a buddy of mine works for Subaru. There was a fire at a chip plant, I think over a year ago in Japan. Almost all the major car manufacturers use those chips. So there's a global supply shortage of cars because every car manufacturer deploys similar technology. It's not true in agriculture. It really does matter where you sit. The net effect here, giving away the ending, is that inflation and this stupid war in Ukraine is probably good for Canadian agriculture and getting over the human toll, which includes the human toll in Canada. Canada's got a very large Ukrainian population. Western Canada, a lot of Ukrainian descendants and roots in the farming sector. You can't just brush that away and it's business as usual. So yes, the crop has to grow on the ground. So there's a lot going on, but inflation probably is supportive of the farm economy this year. Next slide. Interest rates, as predicted, are going up. They are going up fairly rapidly in relative terms. Again, we've gone through a long period of stable inflation, stable interest rates, COVID dropping interest rates. The best I can tell, I've talked to a couple of my farm ag econ buddies, is that the interest rate shock is not hitting the ag market this year. Most farm operations have lined up their financing for the year. However, if you're heavily leveraged, if you just got into dairy and you borrowed a lot of money and you're on some kind of a variable rate, then this is definitely going to have an effect. So this is probably one that we'll have to watch and see how it shakes out. But probably not a huge effect for this year. Next. Input shortages. So there's a lot of talk about input shortages. I had a good conversation with Darren Dillenbach. He's the country manager for FMC in Canada. And basically he said it's making for great media. It's not clear that the effects are that significant in the field. In fact, he said if you were to peel back the roof and look at all the crop protection needs across Canada, the products are probably there. They just may not be in the right place at the right time. So farmers may have to make some trade-offs. But again, this is a factor, but it doesn't seem to be a huge driver at this point. Next. One thing that has come out of COVID that kind of affects both sides of the industry is this topic of food self-sufficiency. So, when the pandemic first hit, for the first time for us boomers, there were periods of time where certain things were not on the shelves, and that's not something we're used to. So the topic of food self-sufficiency has come up. One of our joint clients, Kahntact and Nourish, is the Weston Family Foundation. And they've actually launched, they spent their time trying to think, they're a philanthropic organization. What can we do? What should Weston do to help with the pandemic. And what they came up with was putting some money into a challenge to promote self-sufficiency in fruit and veg. So this is a kind of a new, we weren't thinking about it at the time, and we'll see where that goes. So I know I need to make up some time. So next slide. The bottom line for Canadian agriculture, this was interesting because it's the farmers insurance, but Canadian farm businesses are generally multi-generational family owned. So we know it, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So I'd say the prevailing attitude in agriculture right now is ride out the rough patches, take advantage of the opportunities. There is not panic, and it does not look like this is going to be a major shock. Everything that's happened kind of in the last year is not going to be a major shock that upsets the farm economy. So what does that mean for us as marketers? Next slide. So one of the things is, as anyone on the phone who works in this sector knows, we're always on a 12 or 18-month planning cycle. So in the short term, we are locked in for this year. We were locked in. So the Ukraine war, the resurgence of COVID, all the things we talked about, mostly plans were in place, materials were in place. I'm sure some companies adjusted in some ways, but really any effects will start to be factored in as planning starts for next year. Next slide. One of the axioms that I believe, I don't have data to prove it, but in times of uncertainty, consumers gravitate towards brands they trust. So that's me on the beach when I was young and hip skip and got a hangover, no pressure, generic acetaminophen. The minute I had a baby, a child, even though I know it's the same stuff, you gravitate towards the brand Tylenol. I think back to 9/11, George W. Bush was president, not very popular, got reelected because he was a known commodity. So one of the lessons for agri-marketers now is not the time to starve your brand. The more churn there is in the market, the more your farmer customers will gravitate towards brands they know and trust. So feed your brand. Next. We are seeing a flip, and maybe, I don't see the full agricultural, agri-food landscape, but with our clients, they are putting more money into philanthropy and community investment. It's the right thing to do. Agriculture has a big heart and a good soul, and that is something that we're seeing companies diverting budget into things that can reinforce at a community level. Next. We always talk about this kind of thing. These are two ads that we have in the market that we created. They were running before the Ukraine crisis. Is this good or bad? Is this right or wrong? Is it tone deaf, insensitive, inappropriate? Great marketing is always edgy, but is using military references appropriate or inappropriate with the rhetoric that's going on around Russia and Ukraine? So I don't have an answer, but I will in about 6 weeks, because we're just starting to get into planning with our clients now. But it is a consideration for our marketing going forward. Next. My last point here, it's not a trend, but mental health, depression, anxiety have been growing in the ag sector. And I don't think any of us knows exactly why, but we can all do small things. So I can't reverse climate change, but I can shut off my lights, and I can use not use plastic water bottles. Being kind, the ag industry tends to be very competitive, but not over the line. So it's just a note that you don't always know what someone else is going through. So take a minute, be kind, be a good corporate citizen. And I think that's it, Joanne. And I apologize, Mary's known me long enough. Glenn is never on time, but that wasn't grossly over.
No, there was a lot to pack in. Just you can go online and see everything that we offer. And I mentioned opportunity to download our 2022 report is there. And if you want to reach out to myself or Len, please feel free. There's our contact information there. And now I will turn it over to Robert, I believe, for questions.
Yes, thanks to you both for your presentation. Again, if anyone has any questions, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom. I'm going to start us off. I'm going to jump to trend number 2, Joanne, with you. 2 is transparency. And you were talking about a few examples there of what some of the industry has done or tech has done within the industry. And so I want to ask you a question about that. So us consumers may say we want transparency, but do we really want transparency? And if we do, are we engaged enough and motivated enough to actually use the tools that some of the industry is providing to us? And if so, is there a certain segment of the population? I don't mean age so much. I mean other things than age that you think would be who are more motivated to look for a transparency within their food.
Well, I do think first age is a thing. Younger generations definitely are demanding. They're going to shop based on their values and how all the inputs and outputs are being treated. So I do think there are generational differences there. I will say, and I hear a lot from ag people, they don't want to invite consumers in because consumers in some cases have very idyllic views, of how dairy farming happens versus the reality. But I will say that, better or for worse, we've got the big US of A south of us. And, in the absence of providing anything, they will fill the vacuum. And so, any of you who've seen the Dairy is Scary video that came out of the US using, all sorts of over the top imagery from, sort of those corporate factory farms, that it's not the same up in Canada. So we need to fill that void. So I don't think you're going to go too wrong with transparency, because what's in the consumer head oftentimes, or what they're reading elsewhere, is actually worse than your case. And if you look at some ag examples, some companies that are doing really well, by pulling back that curtain, I always talk about Vital Eggs in the US. So that's a cooperative of some different family egg farms across the US. And you can actually, on the carton, you can snap the QR code, and it takes you to sort of a 360 view of the hens that are laying your eggs. So, you think of eggs as a commodity, but they are actually able to command a premium for their eggs because they're providing that information to the consumer.
And just to build on that, the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity does public trust research every year. And one of the consistent and compelling results is consumers don't know a lot about where their food comes and want to know a lot about where their food comes. So are we as an industry going to fill the gap, or are we going to let other groups, special interest groups, fill the gap? So that's a bit of a challenge. I think you're right, Robert. And, we don't always want to be totally transparent on the ag side. We kind of don't have a choice anymore.
It's a good segue to the next one here, which is trend number 3, which is the plant-based. So a couple questions here for you. So Joanne, you were talking about food tech and that generation next. And I guess maybe I wasn't sure of who you define as generation next, so you can welcome to educate me there. But in terms of that, they are key ambassadors for food tech, and you actually mentioned GMOs, and realizing GMOs is actually an old technology, but GMOs is obviously still a hot topic. So is this a new old opportunity? So either for Len or Joanne can answer this question. Is this a new old opportunity for agriculture to re-engage with consumers on GMOs? Which that ship had sailed many years ago, but is it back? Is it returned?
I'll jump in, and then I'll let Len give his perspective. I do think there's a chance to re-educate consumers on GMOs, certain generations. So the younger generations. So boomers, that ship sailed, I think. They just firmly think GMOs are bad. But we do know that younger generations are more science positive. And I think, where we went off the rails with GMO was that first use case, right? And because it was more for industry, it was more for Monsanto being able to derive profit rather than, there was no consumer benefit initially for GMOs. So I think that's where, you really have to think of that first use case, because that's going to, position you for a long time, for generations. So, if we can reposition GMOs as a way to effectively feed the world, and we've got another opportunity with CRISPR, for instance, and really thinking through what is going to be the first use case there, and make sure that there's a real consumer benefit that you talk about. So I do think there's an opportunity there.
I think
Len, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we dropped the ball as an industry hugely just with the nomenclature. So I don't think there's any hope of reviving genetically modified organisms, other than my band name, which is brilliant and funny at the same time. But the first case, I probably have my timeline wrong, but the flavor saver tomato was one of the first examples of the technology. If we had kept with benefit selling, I think we would have won the day. So I think the hope is that we can focus on the benefits going forward, but the nomenclature, the GMO, I don't think is salvageable, in my opinion.
Also on their plant-based, you talk about, Joanne, about diminishing halo for what I call highly processed plant-based products, and that there's actually, the consumers are moving away from that. So you might have talked about this, but what are they moving away to? Is it that original veggie burger from pre-plant-based meat days? Or what are they going back to animal protein as it relates to protein?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. So, most of the consumers who are using those products are what I call lessitarians. They're not vegans, they're not vegetarians. Those consumers, and they're about 7-8% of the population, they haven't grown a huge amount. So they already know how to eat. Those products came out to appeal to meat eaters who wanted to just eat a little less, whether it was for planet or personal health. And so, there was lots of sampling. Initially, trial, taste was pretty good, texture was pretty good, but then they start looking at the nutritionals, and that's where it started to fall down a bit. And so I think you're seeing consumers eating, perhaps less meat, but better meat. We've seen, certainly during the pandemic, consumers trading up, organics going up, certified humane going up. So eating less but better. We've seen some blended products out there as a different way of, lessitarianism as well. And, we're starting to see more tempeh products coming into the market as well. So fermented soy products. Yeah, so I think you're going to see more and more of that, rather than, those ingredient lists. For years, the trend's been shorter ingredient lists, simple ingredients, things I can pronounce. And, these whole ultra processed foods kind of went the other way. So I think you're going to see it come back a little bit. And that's what we're seeing with, Impossible Burger, Beyond Meat, starting to struggle a little bit in terms of sales.
We are pretty much at our time, but I want to ask one last question for either of you. You may not be able to answer this, but in the news quite often we hear, this is under inflation, so the Canadian farming economy inflation, so something that Len was talking about. In the news quite often we see at the grocery store purchase price for a product that the percentage that goes to the farmer is a very small percentage. Is it the right percentage? Can either of you speak to that in terms of how the economy works for our primary production?
Well, I guess I'll tackle it this way, Robert. Farmers are profitable if you look at the net balance sheet, and the farm economy is healthy. So farmers know how to make money given the pricing structure we have today. It's a really interesting argument, and maybe Joanne can provide a final comment. I don't know what the right percentage is going down to the farm. I know there's a bit of a trend of farmers trying to go direct to consumers. So your client, Joanne, the Walkers, who built an A1 milk plant and are selling directly. So you keep more of the margin. I'm not sure what the right number is. I suspect it hasn't changed much over the years. So even though we're seeing this food inflation, I doubt that that farmers are gathering a larger share of it than they were before. But the sector itself is profitable. There's no doubt about that.
I also think, though, farmers are having a tough time. They have inflation on one end. They're having a hard time pushing it through, right? We're seeing grocery stores actually pushing back And so manufacturers push back. I mean, look at what happened with Frito-Lay and Loblaws there. That was a real food fight. So, you know, the one way, as Len says, is going directly to consumer or creating your own brand and story. So we always say that food tastes better with a story behind it. Consumers want to know who's behind the food. So if you can romance it, put your face on it. And there are different platforms to go directly to consumer or to forward integrate value add and make sure that you tell your story. You know, consumers want to support local, and local is Canadian. They want to support their neighbor, whether they know them or not, and they want to support farmers. Farmers are one of the most trusted groups in the country in terms of professions. So you really can leverage that to your advantage.
Great. I'll ask CAMA Ontario President Ben to turn his camera back on and microphone. Thanks to you both.
Thanks, Robert. Joanne and Len, thank you for sharing your expertise with us. You've always provide so much to think about, and I love the insight that you provide as well. In lieu of a speaker gift, CAMA will be making a donation to the Canadian Agribusiness Education Foundation in your names. CABEF provides scholarships to students pursuing an agricultural education, and we hope these students will then enter the agri-food industry workforce. Thanks again to our webinar series sponsors, 6P Marketing, Protein Industries Canada, and Top Crop Manager. If you'd like to learn more about CAMA, go to our website, cama.org. Thank you for your support today and for participating. Have a good day.
Thanks so much.